automatically is leading you in respect of that particular matter. Are we together? And once somebody submits himself to your influence with regard to a particular issue, you become the leader. So that is, how simple, leadership is. And another point I want to make out of this is that because it is influence, right, it could be negative and it could be positive. So when we are talking about authentic leadership or somebody functioning in leadership, it's not really something that has to do with, positive leadership. We all know that a leader can be an exact positive influence, and likewise, a leader can be negative. Are we together? If I mention some names, you can't deny the fact that they were great leaders, but in the negative sense. If I mention Adolf Hitler, for instance now, the leader of Nazi Germany, the man that started the most destructive war in human history, right? Second World War. Well, he's a leader, or he was a leader. Powerful leader, strong leader. I mean, for a human being to mobilize an entire nation to line up behind him and to, get involved in all the horrible schemes that, he came to be known for. It shows that he was a man that knows how to exert influence on people. But when we talk about the kind of influence that he actually displayed, you and me will agree that it was negative. Are we together? Though strong, but negative, right? Likewise, if I mention somebody like Mahatma Gandhi, or somebody like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? He was a man that exercised great influence. He died several years. He was assassinated, I think, 1968. But every year, they still celebrated his life. As a matter of fact, in the United States, they have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday. And every state in the United States, when you get to their capital city, they have a street named after him. That's influence. Right? And the speech, that great speech he delivered, I have a dream, that people still refer to it today, right? He was a man of terrific influence. And one thing is, he introduced, civil disobedience as a change agent in the United States. That's something that many people will not agree with. They believe the way you can change is just to fight, kill, carry guns. By the time, you create so much destruction, people concerned will listen to you, and at the end of the day, you will have your way. But of course, the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they have come to taught us that, look, you can still effect change without killing, without fighting. You just go by way of civil disobedience. And of course, he borrowed that from the late Mahatma Gandhi, and by the time he put it, practice it in the United States, the government of the day had no choice other than to listen to him, and at the end of the day, the civil rights law that he'd been agitating for was signed into law. Right? That's a great leader, but in the positive sense. Are we together? Right? So if leadership is influence, it could be positive and it could be negative. Right? So let's take a step further. Right, by looking at, the power of leadership. Since I don't have much time, I believe, Professor Greg Rabo would go deep. That's his stuff, right? Well, let me just say this, right? Of course, it's in recent times that the issue is even cropping up in developmental economics. Now, several decades ago, for a nation to develop, right, people will just, there is this common postulation that once you have the factors of production, that is, you have the natural resources, there is capital, there is entrepreneurship and so on and so forth, that nation is destined for greatness. And it was on the strength of that a country like Nigeria was projected to be one country that will be an emerging superpower by the 1980s at independence, because we were a bit far ahead of some of the nations that are, making impact today, right? The natural endowments were there, I mean, human capital, we have it, everything. But, well, here we are. How many decades after independence, we are still battling with just generating 5,000 megawatts in a country where we need close to 80,000 megawatts in order for us to, move ahead. And of course, we are all Nigerians. You don't have to go far before you see all the problems, challenges we are battling with. Whereas you see nations like South Korea that were worse off, they are far, far ahead of us today. They call them newly industrialized country, right? You see a country like Singapore at independence, nobody gave Singapore the ghost of a chance to survive when they decided to break out of the federation they had with present-day Malaysia. Because there was nothing in Singapore rather than port, one single deep sea port. The deepest deep sea port, in that axis of the ocean, Pacific Ocean. That was the only thing. And we are wondering, is this man crazy? That was then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. Does he really know what he's doing? How will you survive? Right? And it was a multi-ethnic society, just like our own multi-religious, multi-ethnic. How will it? But today, if you go to Singapore, you can't call them developing country. They are far, far ahead. I remember when, my daughter visited the country several years ago for a competition. When she came back, I went to pick her at the airport. And the first question she asked me is, Daddy, why are we like this in this country? You are telling us that Singapore, Nigeria, all of us, I said, well, we are what we are simply because of absence of leadership. If everything is present and the right leader does not show up, nothing will happen, or nothing good will happen. The big problem we have in Nigeria, or let me say the biggest, is leadership. Ethnicity, corruption is because we don't have the right leadership. The right leadership, we know how to manage all our differences, turn it into great assets, and use it to propel the country forward, right? Leaders that do not really understand leadership will just be complaining. They are doubt whether there is anything that this country has not been blessed with. Nigeria. We are giant, but sleeping giant, right? The only thing that is missing is leadership. And that is why when you see an organization that is not performing well, or a nation that is not doing well, critically examine the kind of leadership that they have. If the right leadership show up, all the so-called problems they keep on pointing as being responsible for their backwardness, they are not moving forward, they are not this, right? You realize those are not really the key factor. The key factor is there is no leader to lead them correctly. Are we together? And of course, I always tell people, Nigeria is a classical example. We have leaders, but they are not the right kind. I mean, predatory leadership. Are we together? And as long as we continue to have the kind of leadership we have, right, at all levels of governance, I doubt whether this country can move forward. So leadership is key. Leadership is so crucial. Of course, well, at times people don't look in direction of leadership. Are we together? Well, in the military, for instance, they understand that very well. When a unit in the military is not doing well, maybe a battalion or a division, right, they don't blame the rank and file. They just pick the officer commanded, they remove him, and they put somebody else. And at the end of the day, you realize that the new person can turn a unit that was not doing well, turn it into the best fighting unit, right? Like it happens during the Second World War with the British Army in North Africa. Are we together? So leadership is key. Leadership matters a lot. Even at home, in the family setting, if the leader is not leading well, the followers will not follow well. Are we together? So we need to take note of that. Leadership is critical. Leadership is so crucial. But let me go a step further this morning by just looking at this very important issue. At times, we mix leadership with manager, right? Because the idea of leadership a lot of people have is someone that is in charge of a place or someone that is heading a place. Right? A manager can head a unit. Somebody can be a manager and be in charge of an organization. But there is a difference between a manager and a leader, right? The first thing is, a manager, concern is about meeting the target that has been set for him, ensuring that the system goes smoothly, right, and it delivers, on his mandate. That's a manager, right? He will not change anything. He will just use what he has to achieve the objective that has been set for him. But leaders are not like that. The thinking of great leaders is change. They are not satisfied with status quo. When they set a goal and they achieve it, the next thing is we must move forward. They don't build monuments around, the success they have achieved. They are always on the move, thinking ahead, thinking ahead, thinking ahead, thinking ahead. Great leaders at times can think 20 years ahead, 30 years ahead. I say 30 years from now, where should this country be? A manager is not bothered about what happens years ahead. His only concern is, what is the target? How much so and so are we to produce? He cares less whether there is a need to overhaul the entire system. Managers don't change things, right? It is leaders that change things. Are we together? So we need to appreciate that particular point. Because they are always concerned about changing things, right? Leaders are people of